Howdy, I'm Elias Hernandez, and I decided to do Michelangelo for my Arts 150 presentation. I've always had a soft spot for Michelangelo because he was one of the first artists my parents ever introduced to me, and ever since then I've been in love with his work. While we did cover Michelangelo in class, we did not go over nearly all the art pieces he ever did, so today I'm going to go over the art pieces we didn't go over and hopefully show you guys a piece you didn't know existed. To start off, we'll be looking at Michelangelo's early life, and since he always considered himself to be a sculptor first, we'll be looking at his sculptures and then his paintings. After which, I'll give my final thoughts over the artwork we've gone over and all the impact that Michelangelo has left throughout the Renaissance and even today. Michelangelo was born March 6, 1475 in Caprice, Italy. His full name was Michelangelo de Lodovico Buonarroti Simoni. His father worked for the Florence government, and shortly after Michelangelo's birth, they moved back to Florence. Michelangelo always considered Florence to be his true home because that is where he grew up, not Caprice. Unfortunately, his mother died when he was only 6 years old, but that did not stop him from taking an interest in art. While his father initially did not approve of his art interest, that did not stop Michelangelo from becoming the apprentice of mural painter Domenico Ghilardio. After a year of apprenticeship, he drew the attention of local art patronage Lorenzo de' Medici. Lorenzo enjoyed speaking with intellectual individuals and so invited Michelangelo to stay in a room of his own house. Michelangelo accepted and learned a lot from the people Lorenzo surrounded himself with, but most noteworthy was what he learned from Lorenzo's keeper of Roman statues, Bertoldo di Giovanni. Bertoldo was a noted sculptor and tutored Michelangelo to help refine his technique while he lived at Lorenzo's house. And it's quite possible that Bertoldo is the reason Michelangelo considered himself to be a sculptor first and not a painter. Here we have one of Michelangelo's earliest works, Bacchus. Bacchus is the Roman god of wine, and he was commissioned by banker Jacopo Galli for his personal gardens. As you notice, Bacchus is not as physically fit as Michelangelo usually portrays his people. And that's because he drinks wine all day since he's the god of wine. So it's kind of interesting that Michelangelo actually made him, while still physically imposing, not as muscular as his usual pieces of artwork. Another thing you'll notice in his offhand, the one not with wine, he holds what looks to be something in grapes. What he's holding is lion skin, and lion skin is actually a symbol of death back then, and grapes were actually the symbol of life. And behind him, you see a little fawn. The fawn is kind of representation of man. Basically, this statue, while it is for the Roman god of wine, it also shows how people, like the little fawn, will be living off of life, the grapes, unbeknownst the lion skin, death is always close by. We have Michelangelo's Madonna of Bruges. The Madonna of Bruges is Michelangelo's personal take on the Virgin and Child enthroned. What I found interesting about this piece was how different it was from the Virgin and Child enthroned we saw in class. In this one, Jesus is upright, not in Mary's lap, and it also looks like he's walking out of the statue towards us. In this case, Virgin Mary is not happy or pointing at him, she almost appears sad. She's looking down and not even at Jesus as he leaves. It's almost as if she knows his fate to die on the cross, and she looks sad as he leaves her lap and goes out into the world. This piece shares a lot of similarities with the Mary in Michelangelo's Pieta. The way her drapery is crafted, her oval face, and even her kind of sad emotion was very similar. This was the only piece to leave Italy during Michelangelo's lifetime. It was donated to Bruges Ose le Volleywork, or the Church of Our Lady, in 1514. And also interesting, it was only taken down 2 times in its entire history of being there. Once during the French Revolutionary Wars, which afterwards it was put back, and the second time it was actually stolen by the Nazis in World War II, which thankfully we won and gave it back to where it rightfully belonged. The last sculpture of Michelangelo that we'll be looking at today is Moses. Moses was the elder brother of the Sistine prophets and is also known for the one who parted the Red Sea. He was created as part of the tomb for Pope Julius II and was supposed to be one of 6 colossal figures for the tomb. However, Pope Julius died in 1514, so funding was cut rather abruptly and the tomb was never finished. While creating this piece, Michelangelo is said to be inspired by the elements. The wild curly hair was said to be inspired by fire, his long flowing beard was inspired by flowing water, and his heavy drapery was that of the earth. He was not actually meant to be seen at eye level. This piece was supposed to be seen from below. However, that didn't stop Michelangelo from putting in so much detail into this piece. Every curl of his long beard, the veins on his arm, and even all the curves on his drapery. I believe Michelangelo was far ahead of his time when it came to sculptures, and this piece is a prime example of that. The first painting of Michelangelo's that we'll be looking at today is the Battle of Chianciano. The original battle took place July 28, 1364, and it celebrates a Florentine victory over its rival of Pisa. At the time of commission, Florence and Pisa were still locked in conflict with each other, and it's likely that the Florentine government commissioned the piece in order to show off their power of when they beat Pisa at the Battle of Chianciano. Florentine government commissioned both Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci in order to get maximum effort out of both of them. It's not well known, but Michelangelo and Leonardo actually did not get along at all, so putting them against each other should have inspired them to do well in this piece, since they were rivals. Unfortunately, Leonardo had technical difficulties painting the piece, and Michelangelo was called in by Pope Julius II, so he dropped the piece entirely to go work on the Pope's request. As such, both pieces remained unfinished. However, from what we can see, Michelangelo was not painting a battle at all. There was a story where the Florentine captain allowed his men to bathe in a river in order to cool off before the battle. However, he feared that they would be vulnerable to an attack while they were bathing, so he sounded a false alarm in order to get them out of the river quickly. What you see in front of you is the chaos that ensued after. The men were scrambling out of the river, trying to get dressed and get armed up and ready for battle because they feared it was imminent. What I find interesting about this piece is that even at a young age, Michelangelo was infatuated with the male nude body. He could have painted a gory battle or some sort of feisty scene, but instead opted to showcase his skills drawing detailed muscles on the nude male and really establishing himself with an art style that he would later be very famous for. The last painting by Michelangelo that I'll be going over is the Crucifixion of St. Peter. This was Michelangelo's final fresco of his life, and it was commissioned by Pope Paul III during the Counter-Reformation. Unlike his other pieces, Michelangelo focused on the death of a saint, which was quite interesting considering Michelangelo was quite old at this time, probably thinking about his own death soon. An interesting part of this piece is after it was restored, which took very long and cost a lot of money, people began to realize that if you look in the left-hand side below the poles in the top left corner, there's a man in a blue turban. Many researchers believe that this man in a blue turban is actually Michelangelo himself, and if this is true, this would be Michelangelo's one and only self-portrait, because he never made one by itself. Michelangelo died in 1564 at the age of 88, which was very impressive for that time period to live almost to his 90s. Through his long life, he revived ancient Greek and Roman aspects of art, such as the tasteful nude and the appreciation of the human body. This influenced not only his time, but future artists through the form of mannerism. Mannerism is characterized by the idealization of the human body, and mannerist artists like Pontormo would likely have a harder time, or maybe not even exist, without Michelangelo's detailed portrayal of the human form, which he was renowned for. Even today, he is known as one of the greatest artists of the Renaissance, and my personal pick for the best artist to represent the Renaissance as a whole, through his detailed and portrayal form of human body and amazing sculptures. This wraps up my presentation over Michelangelo. I hope you all enjoyed this as much as I did, since Michelangelo is without a doubt my favorite Renaissance artist. Even if you didn't enjoy, I'm glad you took the time to actually watch this video, so thank you all.